Aha!
Hey guys, DM Scotty here. Good to have you with me. Today I'm going to talk about how do you get started crafting. This is really geared towards new DMs who want to also do the crafting for their dungeons. But it could be crusty old DMs like me who have not really done the crafting before or used the terrain but would like to start to. So I really geared this video towards those people. And these ideas and techniques work for me. They may not work for everybody. As we know, there are as many different DMs or GMs as there are ways of playing, different ways of playing. And that would even apply to crafting, as far as how far you want to take the crafting. There's the whole, on one end there's the whole, her starts people who mold each block and then want to build like the entire castle that you're going to be in all 3D, in their basement. And then there's people like us who'd rather be playing instead of building a 3D castle. But anyways, we still want to have a cool location, okay? And it's easy to be overwhelmed by that. Like, what do I make? Where do I start? So I thought it'd be nice to do this video to help people really narrow their focus down on what you really need to craft, and then get that stuff out of the way first, and then craft what other accessories that you could use. So let's go to the table and I'll talk about how I think about my crafting and my philosophy.
Crafters, crafting can be really daunting, especially if you haven't narrowed your ideas down, because you could start to craft all kinds of objects, just random objects, and you may not need them for a while. So what I like to do is focus on what I'm doing, the adventure that I'm going to run, and then craft for that. So basically you'll start with an idea, okay? And your idea can be an idea for an adventure. It can be a plot, some plot points that the players may go on. And so you could craft, if you're one of those people that likes to give the players more options, you could craft several different locations. And then the players can choose. A lot of things you can ad-lib, like you can ad-lib a lot of outdoor locations very easily. Just throw some rocks and maybe a ruin and some other terrain down, and that's very easy to ad-lib. The only thing that's a little harder to ad-lib would be, if you have a specific location with a storyline attached to it. That can be a little harder to ad-lib. So once you kind of narrow that down and get your area all figured out, then you need to figure out at the location the specific. So what is the specific of the location? So maybe it's an old tower, okay, and maybe this one is ruins of civilization. Okay, so ruins of an old civilization and an old tower. Okay, so you could have a couple locations. The old tower might be more structured because there are levels to the tower. If you had powers to climb up the tower, or the tower had windows, you may not have to do each floor in order, but essentially the tower has floors and you'll go through the tower. Something like ruins, you may be more loose with it. You may make some ruins, and then depending on what kind of leads the players follow in the game, that could lead them to specific encounters. So as you can see, as you start to fine-tune this and narrow it down, it becomes a lot easier to decide what exactly you need to craft. So let's go to the old tower. Say it turns out to be an old wizard's tower, and it has 5 floors. Okay, so essentially you need to build 5 floors for the tower. All right, and you may want to have different themes on each floor. Like maybe there's a magic trap, maybe there's a combat encounter, and that kind of thing. Depending on, might be some ancient magic that's still in a floor and it's causing havoc. So you can start to build from that. So once you have the old tower, there's going to be 5 floors. You could have an entrance. If it's Magic Tower, it may not have an entrance. You could have windows. You can decide on the encounters. And the same with the ruins. Although in the ruins, I would center more on encounters. And then you can set them up according to the leads that the player characters take. Okay? So now that you've narrowed it down and you have the encounters that you need for these locations, you can start building. So for the tower, of course, you're going to need the different floors. So that's just easy with the tile technique. In the encounters, you could build some 2.5D encounter locations, or even a little more 3D outdoor encounter locations if you wanted. But in any event, you have a clear idea of what you need to build. Now, then it becomes even clearer because you have a specific encounter on a floor. Okay, so if they go to a certain floor, there's going to be a certain the floor will have certain objects. There'll be certain things that happen. So that will give you exactly what you need to craft. All right. So now we're crafting a specific floor to the wizard's tower. So say we're going to have a circular tower, so we'll have the circular tower. Doesn't have to be a great drawing, just enough to give you an idea of what's going on. So then you have some stairs coming up maybe. And then you have a whole open room to deal with. Okay, so here would be the wall around the... You could have windows in the tower and that kind of thing, or arrow slits. Okay, so now you've got a whole room that's open for your encounter, or for you to build the encounter. Now you have to decide on the specifics, and ideally you want to do this before you start building, because you can really clutter this up. One thing I think that you got to be careful about so you don't get overwhelmed when you build encounters is don't put too much stuff in here. So if you put, like, you know, a magic circle, and then you got a wizard's desk, and you got all this other stuff, unless that clutter is specific to the encounter, I really try to scale back on what I put down, because I build, as I put the 2.5D tiles down, as they explore them. So the more junk I have on a tile, the more I have to have on my staging table, the more I have to get out, the more I have to craft. So say the encounter has to do with a magic circle. Okay, so you have you could just draw a magic circle on the tile itself, or craft one to sit on the tile and reuse the tile for something else. Okay, so say you have a magic circle. Okay, now think what else, depending on what the encounter is, the players, it may be some kind of trap or something, the players may have to defeat this. Okay, so think about what else would you need in the room. You could have some rubble, and you could have some broken furniture, and maybe one piece of furniture. But do you really need, you know, a cabinet and a wizard desk and you know, another cabinet and, you know, a scroll shelf and all that stuff? Yeah, that can make it look interesting, but really the encounter centers around this magic circle. So all this other junk has really nothing to do with the encounter. Now, it can be fun to craft stuff that throws your players off, because often in my games I craft minimally what I need to use for the tile itself. So if I put stuff down, the players tend to look at it, and I put a lot, I do use red herrings in crafting some stuff, but like I say, I don't put too much down. I do that occasionally. But yeah, you really don't need a lot of that stuff. You can maybe have a little rubble and, you know, a broken shelf and one shelf at the most. At the most. You don't want too much stuff cluttering this up, because that's just more stuff you have to craft. It's not really important to the encounter, and it just takes longer to set this up. So if you got to put all these shelves and all these little things and all these details on the tile that really aren't important to the encounter, you're just wasting the player's time as they're sitting there watching you set all this stuff up. I tend to describe stuff to the players as I set up, but I can set up very quickly because, like I said, I use a minimal amount of stuff on my tiles. So I just thought that this might be a good way to kind of help new builders, because it can be a bit overwhelming with what you need to build. So, you know, think of what you need on your tiles. You know, think about it very carefully. So, you know, if you don't use all this wizard paraphernalia on here, that's just that, you know, like 5 desks and, you know, 3 cabinets or whatever. That's just less stuff you have to build for this game. Okay, you know, you could make a couple and use them throughout the. So once they go to the next floor, you could have the same cabinet on another floor. You know, maybe a couple floors up or something. So you can reuse the pieces. But like I say, don't get hung up on putting too much junk on your tile. That's just it just takes time. It takes your crafting time, and it takes your setup time in the game, which is very precious when people are sitting there waiting for you to run the game. So, plus it's a distraction. It's something you have to think about besides DMing. You know, people like to think they're great multitaskers, and most people really aren't great. I'm not a particularly great multitasker. So I like to really focus on what's important. So I think this is great advice, and I wanted to pass this on to some of you newer crafters who are getting into this, and happy crafting.